Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. Oh, hey there. For anybody watching, I'm so bad at rules. I was like, I'm going to Andrew Huberman it. I'm going to make this so much easier. I'm just going to wear black all of the time. It's going to be fine. And right now, depending on when you're listening and watching, please realize that in my world, it is the end of August. Therefore, in the Northern Hemisphere, it's trying to fall to autumn, and I am refusing. So I am dressed very summer-like, because it's still going to be fucking summer for at least 2 more months. I'm declaring it. I'm decreeing it. I am demanding it. And I'm wearing a tank top in order to facilitate this extension of seasons. Thank you very much. So hopefully you love, I think I'm the only one that loves heat and humidity, but I'm definitely not ready for the cool down. That was your insight to the BZ world right now. You're welcome. But one thing this summer has forcibly shown up as, and really it's been quite honestly the last 2 years, is just a giant base for healing. And I hate it. And I used to think that healing was for wussies because it meant that you were wounded, and that sucks for you. But in my infinite middle-agedom and therefore wisdom, what I am discovering is that it takes a pretty powerful person to admit that things aren't going great. And by doing more of the not greatness, guess what? You get less great outcomes. And if you can't do your best, then don't do at all. These are things that I've refused to even experience, let alone allow in my life. And don't get me wrong, it allowed me to achieve many, many things at incredible speeds, and also epic meltdowns, epic breakdowns, significant mental health challenges. But enough about me. Let's talk about why processing our experience, engaging in postmortems, taking a knee, permission to pause, great podcast episode that I did while I was in it, are actual recipes for success. And as paradoxical as it may seem, that has been the word of the last few episodes, or ever, for everything and always moving forward. Slowing down is how you speed up. And it's funny, this episode actually popped up. I go to New Orleans for my birthday every year because it's always Jazz Fest. And one of my nearest and dearest lives there, and I get to catch up. And she had just filed for divorce. And this was a long time coming, my friend. And as much as you go to New Orleans to have a good time, and I had tickets to the festival I used to work for, Jazz Fest. I used to work for Jazz Fest. So I had, tickets for us, and I really wanted to give her some time to hang out. She's got 3 young kids. If you know what that's like, it means you don't get time, let alone to go out. So, I had big plans, but then the whole divorce thing happened, and I realized we're not going to be doing shit. And in my mind, I prepared for what was probably going to be a 5-day couch session. I did go to Jazz Fest. I did go do a few of the things that I wanted to do, but there was no expectation for my friend to do anything other than pause. And it was so important for her and I to have that time together, but for her to also see me go and do the things that I needed to do so that she could do the things she needed to do. And there was absolutely the opportunity to feel guilty about not being the hostess and not showing her friend around and not going to do all of the things we had planned on doing. And it was in allowing those expectations to just melt into nothingness that I think we both found some profound lessons in growth and friendship and life that just simply would have been missed had we not taken the time to Netflix and chill, and not in the proverbial sense, but in the actual literal sense. And that, it strengthened our friendship, not damaged it. I think it would have been really easy for me to be like, I traveled all this way and you can't even get off the couch, but she couldn't. And I think it gave her the launch pad she then needed to be able to mom, and she's a designer, design, and she lives near her parents, be a daughter. Her mom, I think her mom's sister passed away like that following week. So then to have the capacity to support her mother. And sometimes you don't even know why you're exhausted and you need to just take a knee. And it's because what's coming next is really big and you're preparing for it on some level. And so the point of this all being, if you have a very obvious reason to heal, something really fucked up just happened, give yourself that space. But I think this plays into more than just like take the time out. But there are experiences now that I realize I just need recovery time baked in. If I'm traveling, I need half a day to a full day just to be by myself. Just going through a freaking airport right now is so like overstimulating, but also being, in other people's spaces, having to perform, not being in control of your own time schedule. All of that stuff is incredibly draining for me. And so when I bake into a 5-day travel week, a 6th day of recovery, so it is 6 days of my calendar that are taken up. Whoa, I just hit the microphone. Sorry. When I bake in a 6th day for recovery in my 5 days of travel, it allows me to bounce back on day 7, fresh, rejuvenated, ready to rock. We're going to talk about why healing is essential for growth. But those of you who are committed to success, to expansion, to impact, to change, you might do this at a breakneck speed, quite literally. And therefore, taking time out feels very counterintuitive and potentially like the excuse to fail. And I'm just going to ask you to walk through this episode with me, pondering this thought that what if the real magic happens when you stop and reflect? And it's in that, we call it postmortems in like the event industry and world, where you kind of go through like, how was that? What happened? What did we learn? What are we not going to do again? What went really well? Where could, we improve? What are some new opportunities? But in that pause, in that reflection is actually where you're going to discover the next big thing. So I am proposing that it is in the pause we truly transform. Hence, the first part of our discussion, the hidden power of pausing. The second, the growth paradox, how by stopping, we start, and the reflective advantage. So with that, let's get into it. The hidden power of pausing, the breakthrough in the breakdown. The elephant in the room, right? Let's just like call it out. We are obsessed with being constantly in motion. And in today's fast-paced world, it often feels like pausing is the last thing you should do when you're trying to grow. We need to have, I remember I've spent significant amounts of time in New York when I was in my music industry life. And I remember trying to meet all of the people and meet my own personal people and then stay on top of the actual artists. And there was before breakfast meetings, then there was a breakfast meeting, then there was an after breakfast coffee shop meeting, then there was a lunch meeting. The afternoon we might get 2 hours to do work, but then there was happy hour, then there was dinner meeting, then there was an after dinner meetup, and then there was usually the gig. And then it's New York, the city that doesn't sleep, so then you're kind of going out after. And you're out and about from 6 a.m. until 2 a.m. And the city is frenetic. It feels like that is life, is being tapped into that lifeblood and that pulse and just going with that flow. And also it felt like it was sucking me dry. And there wasn't enough caffeine or alcohol or other fun things there were enough of those, but that was how I kept going. And the after tour come down was very fucking real. Sometimes it takes that breakdown to break through. And had I not tuned into the moments between the busy and finding that stillness and that calm in the storm, I think I would have been lost, quite literally. There was a level of productivity that I was able to churn and burn at that point in my life, in my 20s and my 30s, that is just no longer, it's not even remotely available to me anymore. And yet it is still very tempting to not only hold that standard, but compare myself to it. We'll get to that. Neuroscientists at the University of California, Berkeley, found that when we take deliberate breaks, especially after periods of intense activity or stress, our brains enter a state known as the default mode network, the DMN. This is when the brain processes the experiences, consolidates memories, and makes connections between seemingly unrelated ideas. In short, the DMN is where creativity and insight flourish. And so what I hadn't noticed is where I was like white knuckling my space. So in those times of extreme busyness, I would drive, I'd drive the van, and like you get stuck in traffic, and it was like a breath of fresh air for me. I could sit in this bigger space than my hotel room or caught on the tour bus or whatever, and just think. I now work in silence. And I think it goes back to in those moments of being in foreign cities with a bunch of people that I'm trying to coordinate with, there was no stopping because, people are in Australia and I'm on the other side of the world and time zones are demanding. And it was like those moments in between where I would just be in complete silence and stillness, that I would be able to find myself again. I could hear my own heartbeat. I could feel my own breath. I could get lost in my own thoughts. I didn't have an agenda or a place I needed to be. I was literally on my way. And I took those moments of almost active meditation and really, really leaned into them. And that's when I would have these random ideas. And even to this day, driving and long drives are where I like reground and center. And if I need like if I'm really kind of swirling on something and trying to create something new, or I'm working through like a bigger process or project, I will go for a 6-hour drive. Like I'll find a place or bake in some type of adventure, because that's such a proven strategy for me. I didn't know at the time that that's what that was, but my brain has now harnessed that protection of this being in this vehicle. I also do this like on drives, on trains and airplanes, buses, like anywhere that like ground is moving faster underneath me than I could possibly ever make it move myself. And I can put headphones on and just have like meditative noise or white noise or silent, manufactured silence, and just zone out. I'm getting a little lost in the weeds there, so I'm going to get back to the podcast. But this DMN, you have a DMN, a default mode network. And it is, again, where your creativity and insights can emerge. When you take time out to reflect, you give your brain the space it needs to process everything you've been through. And this is where the growth happens, not just at the surface level, but deep within your psyche. And as someone who is consistently rushed, who has never given themselves time to reflect or time to pause, with my mother being sick, my friend being sick, I don't talk as often about that. I did when I was going through that. There's just these forced moments of rest. And you're sitting by someone's bedside. You're waiting for somebody to call you. You're giving someone, an adult, a bath. And those moments of stillness are the dots that connect the aha moments, and they propel you forward in ways you haven't imagined. And this is, I think, when people talk about a meditation practice, the why behind the practice. You literally create the space. Now, if you're lucky, that's when the ideas show up. That's not how it works for me. I sit in stillness every morning for about an hour and a half, and it's radio fucking silence. At first, I was so frustrated and so judgmental of all my friends who could like go and meditate for 20 minutes and then come up with all of the answers to the universe. Whereas like I am literally just sitting there in the brain hole of crushing silence that is my meditative practice. But what I realized is it was like cleaning the house on a Tuesday. When you do it, then you're ready for whatever might happen. And your friends might show up, or somebody might have a meltdown and need to stay with you, or your kids might come home and explode. But everything is so much more easily dealt with when you have that clear space. And so by sitting in silence, I clear out all the crap so that when that one spark of inspo whispers by, I'm able to hear it and hold on to it. Have you ever noticed that your best ideas come when you're not actively trying to solve a problem? One of my clients does this. They will go to sleep with the problem. They'll be like, okay, so I don't know what I'm supposed to do about like next week's like big scheduling gap. Can I put that order in, please? Thank you. And they go to sleep on it. And they say invariably when they wake up, they have the answer. Both I've heard, I don't know if this is true or not, but I've heard this enough times and I've from enough different sources. Both Einstein and Dali, Salvador Dali, had this technique. Dali would hold a cup of tea. Einstein would hold like a handful of like nuts and bolts. And when they got to a creative block where they felt like they couldn't move any further in whatever it is that they were working with, they would go to take a nap. The idea being that liminal space, even Rick Rubin talks about this in The Creative Act, that liminal space between waking and dreaming is an amazing place for ideas and synergies to occur. And so what these two geniuses would do is manufacture that experience. So they'd hold something in their hand and just as they fell asleep, they would drop it, right? And then they'd write down everything that came through immediately upon waking. That regular creation of space, that planning for reflection or for healing, how can you use that time to lead to breakthroughs in your experience? I'd love to know, share. I think your ideas would actually be really helpful for anybody else that is tuning in. So whatever you're experiencing this on, I would love to see how you could plan that time and what you would hope to get out of that time. What kind of breakthroughs might show up if you gave yourself the space to actually reflect and or heal. So the paradox of growth, slowing down to speed up. Often define growth as forward momentum, more work, more effort, more hustle, more, right? But what if the fastest way to grow is to slow down? So the Harvard Business Review, one of my favorite sources, found that individuals who regularly engage in reflection not only report higher levels of satisfaction, but show faster personal and professional growth over time. Why? Because reflection allows you to identify patterns, learn from your mistakes, and make more informed decisions moving forward. It's the classic colloquialism, work smarter, not harder. I actually kind of talked about this in a recently recorded episode in terms of self-acceptance, but it's also this: by allowing ourselves space to heal, we're actually rewiring our brain because we're no longer looking at things as mistakes and regrets. We're just giving them the space to be learning opportunities. And that facilitates the process of growth. I mean, to me, growth is synonymous with learning, right? And so by removing any constrictive labels and therefore experiences, feelings, and thoughts and stories around something being a fuck up and therefore bad and therefore needing a point of blame or shaming ourselves and then experiencing that regret and that remorse, which limits our creative abilities, we just remember it as what it was, which was a challenge that ultimately strengthened us. So if slowing down and reflecting could actually help you achieve goals faster, how would you change your current approach to growth? I'd love to know. So finally, the hidden advantage in discovering insights through reflection. This is unexpected. So it's like we're planning unexpected things, which very counterintuitive, right? You can get very caught up in your day-to-day. And look, I've talked about this ad nauseum. One of the like success hacks and cheat codes is you purposefully disrupt your routine. So what this often looks like is you take half a day or a whole day out. Some of us don't feel like we have that. Maybe just like fuck with an afternoon, maybe make plans knowing you're going to cancel them, whatever it is, but purposefully disrupt your routine. And the reason for this is that when you are going through the motions, you will miss the subtle cues, the small lessons, the insignificant, I don't want to say opportunity because that doesn't sound very insignificant, but the insignificant happenstance that could potentially have a massive impact and be a real opportunity. I talk about this a lot in the Conscious Luck podcast with the Quantum Business Book Club. Conscious Luck and the Intuitive Leader by Gay Hendricks. I can't quite remember what the second book was, but I think I summed them both up. But the idea being, when you move at the pace of you You're able to smell the roses. You're able to notice things because you're not rushing. You're taking the time out, right, to smell the roses. So you notice those little teeny tiny details that could potentially change everything. I get this a lot in the work with my clients because once they create actual space in their experience and they're not just a hamster in a wheel martyring themselves for their jobs and their work and their livelihoods, they start to see all of the cracks and it freaks them the fuck out. And they're like, I didn't know we had so many gaps and there's so many problems and there's so many crises and there's so many things going on. And it's like, those have always been there. You just never had the space to actually workshop them. So firstly, you're not dying. But secondly, congratulations. You're now truly leading because you're not so obsessed with the day-to-day and putting out fires in your business. You can actually sit at, like the 911 headquarters and see all of the different calls and all of the different things that are coming in and triage them and be proactive and prioritize. And it is a fabulous place to create success and growth from when you have the capacity, which you create by slowing down. So by planning time for reflection, you are not just learning, you are discovering, you are uncovering insights that can transform your approach to challenges and open up new paths you just never seen, therefore never been able to consider. This is the true power, the secret hidden superpower of pausing, of reflection. It allows you to see what others don't. And it gives you a very unique advantage, and it will propel, it'll exponentially speed up your growth and your development, even though you're slowing down. What do you think would change in terms of the trajectory of your own life and your own success if you took more time to reflect on your experiences? So, yeah, that one came out a little bit faster. Maybe take the extra 10 minutes to reflect. The point being, don't just keep pushing forward. Bake in time, plan time regularly to pause, reflect, and heal. Definitely plan time for healing. If you're anything like me, it's the hardest of the three in terms of pausing and reflection. I trick myself into reflection with exercise, with going for walks. I put them in my schedule like I would any other thing in my life. You're going to have to figure out your own ways of overcoming your ego and your objections, because even the most successful and the most practiced of us who bake these things into our schedule will go kicking and screaming. I always think about Tim Ferriss used to say every quarter he would take a long weekend and every year he would take 10 full days to be completely off grid. And he has to tell his assistants and his team, this is a non-negotiable, most especially for me, because I will blow through these and I don't want to do them ever. And they are not enjoyable in the moment, but afterwards comes my greatest success. And so again, kind of play with it. 3 days being off grid for most people feels impossible, let alone 10. Start with an hour, no phone, no tech, no distractions, and fill that with something that'll, whether it's picking up a knitting habit or going for a walk or going for a long drive, like give yourself an excuse of having I need to go check out this floor and decor place because I have to get new laminate for all of my new whatever it is. So I would encourage you to do that and bake it in and then test it. See, not necessarily what comes up in that time, but what happens after that. Another thing I talk a lot about is being like upstream. Notice how taking this time affects the rest of your day or potentially even the next day, especially if you're taking longer chunks, right? You will object. I'm pointing at my head right now for anybody not watching. So get used to the objections, the excuses, the stories that you will tell yourself about why you don't deserve this space, why you don't have the time for it, most especially why you don't have the energy. Waking up at 4:30 in the morning has never been my idea of a good time. And 9 times out of 10 does not feel like the thing I want to do when that alarm goes off. And look, I'm not like hopping out of bed and being hyper productive at that time at all. It is literally just quiet, silent time because the entire world is still asleep in that moment, unless you pick up the phone, in which case half of the world is still very much awake. But the point being, this is a practice and it will yield results. What that looks like and the rewards that you will reap are something you get to figure out and discover and unearth. And I'm really excited for you. think that's, it's really like I mean, honestly, it's been 2 decades of meditation practice for me to feel like it is now part of my day. I can feel that the way my body starts to respond to that sense of urgency and that desire to rush and to push and to get it done and move faster and quicker. And it's like, I just literally notice my heartbeat, which doesn't seem like the cue. For me, that's what I've tuned into. That is my cue. It's time to just take 3 slow, deep breaths. And it can be as simple as that. So please remember, growth isn't just about moving forward. It's about gaining momentum with purpose, clarity, and wisdom. That comes from taking the time to stop and reflect and heal. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this time. This is important time. I always think about all of these, I create this as a shared exchange with the idea that it's worth your while. And therefore I'm asking you to invest. And I don't take that lightly. I am deeply honored to share this space with you. It has been 2 years of incredible pause for me. And I am so excited to be able to report what the unearthed and undiscovered yet rewards of that will be. So thank you for sticking through this with me, sticking with me through this on life. Anyhow, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity with you. Please sign up for the loop. That'll give you a lot more personal insight as to what's going on in my week to week, what I'm tuning into, what I'm listening to, what's keeping me really interested. You can always email me, hello@nicolebz.com. I would love to answer specific questions for you. I'm kind of trying to figure out if I should do like an open office hours, maybe like a free 20-minute coaching that I can share with people, because I think that's actually of real benefit, not just to the person receiving it, but for people to witness as well. So often we're going through like very similar experiences. That's kind of what I'm tuning into when I share these and record these. I heard somebody say like these regimented podcast schedules where you're just releasing something every week impacts the quality. And, like, I always have something to say. Let's be very fucking real about that. But I collect and collate these ideas and I refine them and then I record them. And I do that in advance. And the amount of times people tell me this is exactly what they needed to hear never ceases to amaze me. So once again, I very much hope that this was useful. I accept all forms of feedback. So feel free to let me know if there are ways I can make this better. And I think that's okay. Now I'm done. I'm absolutely done. Thank you so much. And I'll, see you next week. Talk at your face, in your ear hole on the flip side.